So, welcome again. Today we are going to cover a topic called classes in Python. Now, as we all know, Python is an object-oriented language, so it supports classes. We can make a class and assign some attributes to it, methods to it. What are these? We will cover in this lecture. So, in this lecture, I will teach you to create classes in Python in just two simple steps. Yes, only two steps. You need to know nothing other than these two steps. At the end of the lecture, you would be able to create a class with only two simple steps. So, topics covered. We have what is a class, from predefined classes to a user-defined class, and then visualizing the classes, and at last we are going to create our own class with only two steps. Okay, so what is a class? That's a Google definition of it. So, a user-defined prototype for an object that defines a set of attributes that characterize any object of the class. The attributes are data members, class variables, and instance variables and methods, assessed via dot notation. So, but this is a very complicated definition, but it's by Google. So, in Python, everything is easy. So, let's have a look. Now we have a lot of unfamiliar words like user-defined, object, attributes, dot notations, and methods. What are these? You need not to worry. I will explain them one by one. So, if I say that you are already using some of the classes unintentionally, how would that be? So, recall these methods. You must have used list.append method on a list and a pop method on a list. The append method appends the parameter to the end of a given list, that is list 1, and the pop method pops the fourth index element in this case in the list 1 element. So these are actually, you can imagine them themselves as a methods of some class, and you are already using them. So you see, it's not a big deal to use classes. You are already using them. Okay, now you only know how to create your own. So if I take an example, let's say list1.append a b c, can you identify object, dot notation, and a method in this line? I'll give you some time. Okay, now that was obvious. Dot notation simply means that dot. Okay, then method is used for some function, and you can easily see that this thing has some parameters included. So this must be a method or a function, and this must be an object, since object is the only left option here. So now moving further, these were the predefined. Mean you cannot change an append method. It's already defined in Python. For example, if you create a list and you append something to that list, then it would go to the end of the list by default. So what if you want to add the element in the front of the list by using the append method? However, there are some other methods in Python which allow you to add element in the front of the list. But what if they weren't? If you wanted to do something out of the league, so here is another option for you, that you want to add an element in the middle of the list. So as I said, there are some predefined methods in Python library which allow you to do this thing, but for creating your own, you need to know about classes. You have to create your own class and work it in the way you want it to be. So similarly, the pop method, what if you want to remove the element counting from the last, not from the 0? So that's also application of creating your user-defined classes. Now, in object-oriented programming, the programmer is responsible for all the processing done by methods or an object. As you see, in predefined methods, for example, append and pop, you need not to worry about how the elements are popped out or how the elements are appended in the list. You only have to write dot append, and it will append the element at the end of the list, or it will pop the certain element, indexed element from the list. So but if you create your own class, user-defined class, you are responsible for each and every processing done by the method on an object. For example, if you want to change the append method, then you have to define what append method does when it's called. So let's move further. Okay, now classes. Now you get an essence that you are already using some objects and applying some methods on them. So if someone asks you what is a class, first, don't get panic. Take a deep breath and say out, class is nothing but just a collection of user defined functions. Okay, I will tell you how to create some classes and what is the meaning of this sentence, but till then. So now you are finally familiar with functions, aren't you? You know how to create some functions, you know how to pass arguments to a function, and you know how to modulate and work upon the arguments passed to the functions. Okay, so let's create some model functions. Okay, this is an exercise for you. Write a function which calculates the area of a circle with given radius. This is your first function. Then another function, write the function which calculates the circumference of the circle. Okay, and the third one, write a function which calculates the diameter of a circle. Okay, for all the three questions we need the radius. Without it we can't move further. So assume that the radius is given to you. So can you create the function? So let's try out in Code Sculptor. So now in Code Sculptor we'll try some functions that we had mentioned. So first, for function we write def, that's the keyword, then the name of the function, that's get area. In this case, gets area, and then the arguments passed to the function. Let's say it's r, stand for radius, and then we in next line we define what the function returns. So that gives it return 3.14 into r into r. That's it. So this is our first function defined. Now moving on to the second function, again the same set of steps. Now def space get circum and r. Now return 2 into r. So now diff get dia r, return 2 into r. So these are our set of functions, and so it's good. Now you have seen the functions, how the functions work, and now we are going to relate the functions with the classes. You haven't learned anything new yet. I've just recapitulated you all the things that have known to you. You know how to create the functions, and now I have asked you to create some functions. Now let's make a class out of it. It's really easy. You know, this is the first step of creating the class. As I mentioned earlier, only 2 steps are needed. This is the first step. So in first step you need to know only a class keyword, and you have to give a class name and an indentation. So I don't think that it's much difficult. It's easy, just 2 things: class name and indentation. So as you remember, this is how your function look like. Okay, 3 functions. Now we have to give a class name and some indentation. So let's see how it looks like. If you have some functions, you only have to do is write a class space the class name and with a colon and indent all the functions in that class. That's all you have to do. So this is your first step in creating a class. You are 50% done. Now let's see. Now as in the starting of the lecture I told you some unfamiliar words like methods or dot notations, and one of them was a defining parameter. What is this defining parameter? So a big question I'll ask you to answer is, what is the basic attribute we need to satisfy all the methods? Or in other words, what is the thing that defines a circle? For example, when you are creating a class of a circle, it may be anything, but in this case we are calculating the area of the circle, circumference of the circle, and diameter of the circle. So what is the basic thing that we need to calculate all the things? Yeah, that's the radius of the circle. So you see that radius is the defining parameter. Now you are almost done with it. So let's see. Okay, now one more step. Include an additional method in it, passing in the defining parameter. Now here comes the defining parameter. Okay, you have to include a new function named init and pass in the defining parameter, and then add an additional attribute self to each of the methods in the class. Don't worry if you're not getting this, I will show you an example. Now an easy step, that's substitution and elimination. What does that mean? Substitution, by substitution and elimination, I mean that, for example, in this init method, I am already passing an r variable and I am assigning a self dot rad. This could be anything, but self is the keyword. Self dot rad is equal to r. So I can assign all the r in all the functions with self dot rad. That seems legit. So we can remove r from here, we can remove r from here, we can remove r from here, and simply call the self dot rad from the parent function. So here are our set of functions, and now I'm going to create a class out of it. So remember our steps, just create the functions, and then the first step is include a class name. So let's say class, the keyword space, the class name. Let's take circle, circle colon. It's done. Then indentation. So indenting, yeah, it's done. Now this is our first step complete, and we have made a class, but it will not work because we have to declare a special method called initializer method or init method underscore underscore init method, which gets called automatically when we create a class object. So we need to define that. For that, that's now second step. So we will write def so underscore underscore init underscore this thing. Okay, this. So now we have created an init method, and now we see that all the methods here contain a parameter known as r. That's the radius of the function. So we ask the initializer method, that's called when the object is created, to take that input in the form of a radius of the circle. So we will write it as r. Okay, now we can eliminate, we will eliminate all the pending r's in this. Okay, now in this step we write also include some a self parameter to with all of them. So it would be like self, and I just copy paste it. C v row v row v. Okay, now we do initialization, that's self dot, give it a name like radius or rad is equal to r. So now this variable r would be called as self dot rad in this class circle. So you understand, now we can replace all the r's with self dot rad. Okay, so let's do it. Okay, self dot rad, now just copy paste it, it's tedious. So C, control V, and control V, and control V. So now we are done. Now the last step, since we have made a binding initially that the r stands for self.rad, so we don't need these r parameters. We can keep them if we want them, but there's nothing, because we are already getting already the radius of the circle r when the object of this class is created, so there is no need of defining it again and again. So let's run it for one time, it works fine. Oh, it's no error, so it's fine. Thank you.